Teen Pride Book Talks. My name is Lucy, and this is the program on AADL TV, where each episode I take a few minutes to talk about a young adult book or books that are both inclusive of and representative of folks in the LGBTQIA+ community. Today I am going to be talking about coming of age graphic novels. I have 4 different graphic novels to talk about today. The first one is called You Brought Me the Ocean, and this is written by Alex Sanchez and illustrated by Julie Moreau. This book is an Aqualand adventure, and it is the story of Jake Hyde. Jake lives in a town called Truth or Consequences in New Mexico. Jake's a high school student who is contemplating his next moves after high school, where he will go to college. Jake is very drawn to the ocean, but he doesn't go in the ocean because his father died in an accident in the ocean. But he does want to leave New Mexico and go to school to study oceanography, and he's applied for a program to do so. Jake's best friend is a girl who lives next door named Maria, and Maria believes that they are going to go to college together in New Mexico. Maria knows that Jake wants to study oceanography, but she doesn't know that he went ahead and applied and did that, and Jake's mother has no idea that he has done this. So this is a secret that Jake is keeping. Another secret that he is keeping is that he is gay. His mother doesn't know, his best friend Maria doesn't know, nobody knows, and he's waiting till he gets away to college, come out then, and finally be himself. He describes himself as sort of hiding behind this curtain, and sometimes he imagines what it would be like to draw back that curtain and to let people know who he really is, but he stays pretty well hidden until he gets to know better this other student named Kenny. Kenny is a big swimmer on the swim team. He spends a lot of time in the water, and he is openly gay. Jake and Kenny start to connect and hook up, but nobody knows about this. Jake does go in the water to be with Kenny, and this is when he discovers he has these marks on his body that he was always told were birthmarks. And he starts to discover that they are actually related to who his father was, and that they are not birthmarks. They relate to his powers within the water. And so as he starts to sort of realize those powers and use them, he starts to question his mother more about who his father is, and he has more questions about his own identity. His friend Maria, who Jake believes is his very best friend, is actually in love with him, and Jake's mother is pushing him to have a relationship with Maria. She kind of believes they already do, and so it's really hard for him to come out to Maria, but it's also really difficult to keep the secret. And then he has this other secret of what his birthmarks really are. There's definitely some bullying in this book when other boys in the town who go to their high school spot Kenny and Jake kissing in the water. They're very homophobic and they're really cruel to them. And it's interesting how this story, which is a coming of age story, it's a coming out story, it's paired with this bullying story, but it's also has this background of superheroes and supervillains. It's an interesting pairing to have real life bullies and think about villains and using heroic powers. So Alex Sanchez has done a wonderful job sort of combining all this to tell us Jake's story. The illustrator, Julie Moreau, is also the illustrator of the book Blue is the Warmest Color, which went on to become a movie. And in a conversation I read with the two of them, they were both saying how central writing and illustration was to their queer journeys. And it gave them an ability to say things that they maybe couldn't say out loud. It gave them a place to express those things. So they've come together to give us this really great story of Jake and Kenny, and Jake going through this self-discovery and having these experiences to figure out who he really is. Another one of the graphic novels that I'm going to talk about also takes place between a person, a human who lives on land, and someone who exists in the sea. This is called Girl from the Sea, and it's by Molly Knox Ostertag. It's the story of Morgan, who's a 15-year-old girl. She lives on this really small, remote island where everybody knows each other, and she cannot wait to get away from this island because she has a secret, which is that she's gay, and she would like to be able to come out, but she doesn't feel that where she lives is an environment where she can do that. Her mother is really depressed. She has a younger brother who experiences a lot of highs and lows and has some pretty volatile behavior. And she has this group of best friends that she wants to get away from because she realizes that these best friends don't know her at all. They don't know that she's queer. And she realizes how much of their conversation and their activity exists in this really heteronormative sphere, and how much they focus on boys and connecting with boys. And so Morgan just doesn't feel that she has a place there either. So enter into this a girl named Kelty, who is actually a Selkie. So she is part seal, part person. And every 7 years she can come out of the water and stay as a person if she finds romance. Morgan and Kelty already know each other from a time when Kelty saved Morgan when she fell in the water, but they do connect again on land and they start to fall in love. But they keep this relationship hidden from Morgan's friends and family. Morgan's friends do know Kelty and they think she's really strange. And so there's a part of the book where Morgan's navigating the relationship between trying to hold on to these friends and trying to be with Kelty. And Kelty says, I don't really like the way you act around your friends. It's interesting that that also helps Morgan realize that maybe maybe those people aren't really her friends. This book starts out right at the beginning with these two girls kissing. And so there's no will they, won't they drama in this book. We know how they feel about each other. The only will they, won't they is whether or not Kelty is able to stay out of the water. And so I'm not going to reveal whether or not in this book she does stay out of the water, but there is this cyclical nature to the book. There's the 7-year cycle of the Selkie coming out of the water with the option to stay. There's the cycle of summer. There's the cycle of finding romance. There's the cycle of finding yourself. And one of the reasons that Morgan is worried about coming out is it's not related to violence. It's not related to homophobia. She's afraid that once people know that she's queer, she won't be seen in the same way. And people will stop seeing her as Morgan. There's a quote in an interview that I read with the author where she says, there's still this fear of being known, and this fear that maybe the version of me that everyone else wants me to be is better than the person I actually am. The book is very much about realizing that the person you are is the person that the people around you need and love and want to see. That's a wonderful description of the self-discovery and the coming of age journey that Morgan goes on in this book. The next book that I want to tell you about is called Juliet Takes a Breath. This is by Gabby Rivera, and it's illustrated by Celia Moscote. And this is a graphic version of a young adult novel that Gabby Rivera published in 2016. This is the story of Juliet, who is a 19-year-old who is a newly out lesbian in some spaces, and she's trying to figure out what it means to be queer, to be a feminist, to be Puerto Rican. She lives in the Bronx with her family, and when she comes out to them, they don't accept it. They're not mean about it. They don't kick her out, but they just say that's a phase. That's not who you are. No. And so she flies to Portland, Oregon for an internship with a person named Harlow Brisbane, who is this popular white feminist that Juliet loves. She loves her books. She follows her online, and she just thinks that what Harlow speaks of and what Harlow says is sort of the feminist gospel. And so she wants to go out there and learn more about Harlow, learn more about Harlow's queer life, learn about the people that live around her. And there is this very accepting community. There's some of Harlow's friends. There's Max, who's a Black polyamorous lesbian who is very much a guide and helper to Juliet. She gives her a lot of counsel. So when Juliet gets to Oregon, she really is surrounded by this openly queer community. And so getting to know these people like Max and her partner helps Juliet start to get to know herself as well. And one of the strengths of this being a graphic novel, as opposed to the earlier book that Gabby Rivera wrote, is that because you're getting illustrations, you can see how much interaction Juliet is having with other queer people of color. And the community that she's in is very much that community, except for Harlow, who is actually pretty clueless about race in general and really about what it means to be a feminist, because she's only seeing feminism through this particular white lens. And she starts to misrepresent who Juliet is when Harlow has her speaking engagements, and Juliet starts to see who Harlow really is. That's a big piece of the coming of age in this book, is to see someone who you considered your spiritual guide and this person who you flew across the country to work for be revealed as someone they are completely not. Juliet does find a wonderful romantic relationship in Oregon, and this connection really starts to help her love herself in a physical way. It starts to help her love her body and enjoy her body and give her a better sense of how she wants to communicate to her family who she really is. And she is more confident in doing that. And she starts to learn more about her family as well. Her family has always been very loving. It's just that they have trouble seeing Juliet as someone else. So this book is a great coming of age story in that it shows us some of Juliet's emotional growth. It shows some personal growth and the realization of the fact that how she views and considers herself is really important to the people and connections that she makes socially and politically and in other ways as well. The illustrations in this book are very warm. The colors are sort of oranges and purples, and that gives it a warm feeling where you realize that Juliet is really receiving a lot of love from a lot of people. So that is Juliet Takes a Breath. The last coming of age graphic novel that I want to talk about is called Bloom, and this is by Kevin Panetta, and it's illustrated by Savannah Ganuccio. And this is Ari's story. Ari has graduated from high school and he works in his parents' Greek bakery. It's not really his dream or life goal. He's also in a band and he wants to move to a big city with his band and start playing music. But Ari's father will not let him quit his job at the bakery because his parents' bakery is struggling and they need Ari's help. They also are getting behind. They're very popular, especially in certain days and certain holidays throughout the summer, and they need to hire someone. Ari's father does not want to do this, so Ari goes through the process himself. They end up hiring another person about Ari's age named Hector. Hector is actually in culinary school, so he has a lot of baking skills and he loves to bake. It is what he loves to do. He happens to be in Ari's town because that's where Hector's grandmother lived and she died, and he is tasked with going through her house and her things. So that's why he's there for the summer. Hector is generally very easygoing. Ari's parents love Hector. Ari really likes Hector. They have a fun time in the kitchen. Hector makes the baking a little bit different and more exciting and more fun for Ari. And the way that it's illustrated is in these panels where there are no words, in these blue colors, but there are flowers sprinkled throughout the page just to make you realize that there are good feelings happening in this kitchen between these two characters. And so these wordless scenes are a really nice pairing of Ari's angst sort of giving way to Hector's joy. And as Hector and Ari start to get closer, Ari starts to lose some of that angry teen feeling that he had, and he really starts to step into his role in the bakery. A lot of this is because Hector's helping him see things differently. He's just sort of been in this rut working for his parents' bakery and only ever seen things in one way. The book is really a lot about the romance between Ari and Hector. As far as a coming of age book, it really is Ari's coming of age that we see in this story, especially going from this kid who doesn't want to be where he is, who resents his parents for making him be where he is, into someone who's considering other people around him. And because Hector is providing him with this love, this allows Ari to view his other relationships in a different way. Though Hector is filled with joy and he's very loving and he's very supporting, he does have his own issues that he's facing, and that's another interesting part of the book. He's not just this fluffy, fun, happy character. He really has some depth as well. We get a lot of food in this book. Some of the recipes that Hector bakes when he's not baking actively for the bakery are recipes that were handed down from his grandmother, and they are Samoan. He makes this Samoan banana cake for Ari. There is even a recipe included at the end, which is fun, for the famous sourdough rolls that Ari's bakery makes and really can't keep in stock during the 4th of July weekend specifically. I really enjoyed this book. It was a little bit longer than the others, but you get a lot of Ari and Hector's characters, and though there is this angst in it, there's also just this feeling of summer and happiness and good baking, and it was a real pleasure to read. So that is Bloom by Kevin Panetta. And I found each one of these 4 graphic novels to be enjoyable to read. They're all very different, even the 2 that take place in the ocean, very different stories and very different ways in which the main characters start to come of age. But despite their differences, there is a universality to all 4 of these books, which is that the main characters are experiencing growth and personal discovery. So that's it for coming of age graphic novels. Thanks for joining me.